In 2012, Cody R. Wilson of Defense Distributed in Austin, Texas, produced and published files for a fully functional 3D printed gun, which anyone could download and manufacture without any arms serials or weapon licenses, provided they had the right tools. Already in 2016 alone, 3,000 Americans had been murdered by firearms devices. These printed guns are made from plastic, meaning metal detectors such as those found at airports are not able to trace them. So the moral problem here is, should we as the general public have such easy access to firearms which could increase the risk of undetectable shootings? Anybody, from a 60-year-old banker to a young teenager in his bedroom, could go and buy a 3D printer in the morning and have a fully functioning gun by the afternoon. I'm going to use the ethical cycle to address this problem. Having now identified the moral problem, we move on to stage 2, the problem analysis, and discuss the problem in terms of the stakeholders. If someone were to buy a 3D printed gun and shoot someone else with it, which stakeholder is ultimately responsible? Is it the person who shot the gun, the manufacturer of the gun, the company who built the 3D printer machine, or the government who failed to implement digital laws? There are many stakeholders which need to be considered in this ethical problem. We move now on to stage 3 and analyse the possible courses of action that can be addressed for the problem of the 3D printed guns. Firstly, governing bodies and stakeholders could completely ban the 3D printing of untraceable guns and unlicensed weapons and impose extremely harsh penalties on anyone found guilty of breaching these actions. Secondly, we could just allow 3D printing to develop as it is. There have been no significant fatalities related to 3D printed guns. And people already have the choice to go to the shop and buy a knife to stab someone, as much as they have the choice to 3D print a gun and shoot someone, yet we don't see all shops banning the sale of knives. So now we make an ethical judgment using a range of ethical frameworks. Firstly, we will look at the utilitarian perspective. Most people would consider the ease of manufacturing guns with a 3D printer a threat, and would want to have the production of them banned to protect themselves and the loved ones. However, the 3D printing of guns can also bring about happiness to a specific set of people who may find pleasure from their creation or using it to harm others. The safety and well-being of the general public is considered here far more important than the ability for hobbyists to manufacture weapons. Therefore, based on a utilitarian framework, where the level of distress is greater than the happiness, governing bodies should completely ban the 3D printing of guns. From a deontological perspective, we can look at the moral worth of the action and not the consequence. We should respect people's options and decisions. If someone can justify why they may need a firearm, then we should not be interfering or criticising their decision. We are only concerned here with the printing of the firearm, which possesses no significant threat to morality, as we are not concerned with the intentions of the user from a deontological perspective. Therefore, from applying this framework, option 2 is the most acceptable, and we should not be banning creativity. Finally, we need to reflect on the decisions made. I like to criticise the utilitarian framework as it's too simplistic and does not really consider the side effects, such as the piracy aspects of banning a gun. The framework requires complete honesty and no illegal sharing of files, which is far from the case in the real world. It also fails to consider the cultural aspects. Although in the UK this may be effective, in other countries such as the USA, banning of 3D printing guns would infringe on the Second Amendment and the Bill of Rights to some degree, and would not be so simplistic to apply. However, I also believe deontological framework is too narrow for the complexity of the ethical issue. A gun is a weapon, and by not considering the consequences, this framework fails to realise the grave ethical implications a gun may be used for. Since the applied frameworks provide two different outcomes, a further reflection is required, and an intuitive framework should be applied to find the best solution and compromise of these two contradicting frameworks without being too simplistic or narrow. The general public should be made to obtain a license to own a firearm and register the weapon, making it possible to integrate 3D printed guns into the already existing firearm market, making them both traceable and monitored. Therefore, 3D printing can still grow and develop in other industries where it's providing huge benefits, which cannot be achieved with traditional means of manufacturing. For example, the ability to 3D print artificial limbs in medicine or print on-demand repair parts in space shuttles.